I'll second.
Great. Because we are virtual, we do have to do roll call voting. Amy,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
John.
Yes.
I will also vote yes. It is unanimous. And again, to Mr. Ford, Mr. Ritchie, and the Duran Family Foundation, a hearty thank you from not only the school committee, but the entire school community. Thank you very, very, very much.
Can I just add to that real quick? A special
Absolutely.
shout out to the robotics club. I know that Mr. Ford was particularly impressed when he sat in on a meeting with Mr. Kohut and his whole team, and particularly the students, about how invested they were, and he wanted to make sure that he could look to remove as many barriers to success as possible. So I appreciate that.
And
Great.
give them the competitive edge that other robotics
Right.
teams have. So,
Right.
you know, that this is a group of people that put their money where their mouth is. They're doers. They don't just talk about things. You know, it was 2 weeks ago that he brought a problem, and 2 weeks later, we have a portion of it solved. And it's the generosity does not go unappreciated.
Right. I mean, I do remember when the coaches were in talking to the school committee and talking about just their ability to compete, and this will go a long way to help that. So it's exciting. And again, thank you very much to all those folks involved. Appreciate it. Reports and discussions, Miss Angelakis.
Okay, this is the time of year that it unfortunately falls on the same night as the public hearing, but our high school team of the Director of Finance, the Rachel Sturma, and the principal, Mr. Kohart, bring to you the draft of the 25-26 program of studies. I know we've had a lot of discussions about them with Mr. Kalishman, Mr. Kohut, myself, about trying to give students opportunities to take more classes and more electives. And so I'm excited tonight for them to present to you because in addition, we've talked about the competency determination now with no more MCAS. And so that will be woven into their presentation as well. So if somebody can click on the agenda or allow sharing to everybody, there is a presentation besides the draft of the program of studies. If you allow Mr. Kohut to share, I imagine he could share his screen. You're muted, Glenn.
There we go. Sorry. Mr. Toulat, can you share? Can you allow Dennis to do the program?
Yep. Hold on one second.
Great. Thank you.
It looks like he has permission.
Oh, everybody, it might be already set to everybody having permission.
Oh, okay.
By Mr. Kohut.
Dennis, do you see a share? Do you see a share?
Yeah, let me.
There we go. There we go.
All right. Let's see. Please bear with me. It's
Sure. By the way,
been a while since I've had to do this.
Mhm.
and a big welcome, by the way, to Dennis and Rachel. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having us. Just want to say thank you to Mr. Ford, Mr. Ritchie, Duran Foundation for the donation. Like Superintendent Angelakis said, I think I met with Mr. Ford. I want to say it was in December. He met with some of the robotics kids, and we talked about this. And he really worked really hard to make this happen. So I really appreciate it. And I know the kids, I know the team, I know the coaches really appreciate it as well. Okay, so we are very excited to present our program of studies for the 25-26 school year. There aren't a ton of changes or new courses, excuse me. But as Superintendent Angelakis pointed out, something that we did have to flesh out is what's called the competency determination. And that is in the wake of the ballot initiative that passed in November that removed MCAS as a graduation requirement. So something that we tried to do is to really increase access to electives. We have a lot of great electives running. We're hopefully adding a few more next year. But as we went in and we looked at course taking patterns last year, and we looked at the schedule, there were certain classes that kids could have taken, but just didn't have the opportunity for a number of reasons. It could be something like when that class is running. Perhaps the class was a year-long class as opposed to a semester class, and students were not enthusiastic about 1 year-long elective as opposed to maybe 2 semester-long electives, or there were prerequisites that made it challenging for students who are maybe ninth graders or 10th graders to take those electives. So what we did, myself and Rachel Sturma, the counseling team, we really went through and looked at and tried to make sure that we really understood why those prerequisites were in there, and to try to open up as many electives as possible to as many kids as possible. So as I mentioned, back in November, there was the ballot initiative. I believe it was question 2, right? And the voters voted to no longer require MCAS as a graduation requirement. So because of that, we are now mandated to develop our own what's called a competency determination, to essentially say that these students have these skills in order to earn a Swampscott High School diploma. We cannot rely on MCAS anymore. However, please keep in mind that MCAS will still happen. So we are required to still have students take MCAS. However, a passing score on MCAS will not be required by the state to earn a diploma. So here's what this will look like. It will essentially be coursework. And our courses, our program of studies is already aligned with what's called Mass Core. So Mass Core is what the DESC recommends that our students take in order to get a high school diploma. There isn't a required succession of courses that kids must take. DESC does not mandate that. That's a local decision, with the exception of US history, and kids have to take PE every year. But we were already aligned with Mass Core, so we were feeling good about our progression of courses. But this new regulation required that we really spell out, okay, what is the CD going to be? So for a lot of our kids who have already took MCAS before this regulation went into place, they're essentially, if they passed MCAS, they're good. They've met the CD. So that's our current seniors, juniors, and for the science test, our sophomores, because they took that last year. So that's the vast majority of our kids have already passed MCAS. However, there are some students in the classes of 25, 26, and 27 who have not passed. So the CD that we've put in place will be that those students need to take and pass biology or a lab science equivalent course, ELA 10, 11, and or 12, and Algebra 1 or an equivalent course like geometry. There are very few students who fit into this category. For classes of 27 and beyond, we looked at what MCAS has historically assessed in the case of Swampscott High School, and we essentially made that coursework our CD. So that's biology or a lab science equivalent course, Algebra 1 and or Algebra 2 and geometry, and English 1. So students will have to take and pass those courses in order to earn the competency determination. I have met with the other principals in the NEC in our conference. We meet monthly, and for the most part, we're all doing a very similar thing. I do have a feeling that DESC may come out in the future and mandate this in different language, but this is the requirement for, at least for the time being. They did also send out a Q&A back in December, because obviously when the ballot initiative was passed, it created a lot of questions. And so they responded to this in a Q&A that I linked here. So if any of you are interested, of course, I'll answer questions too. But if any of you are interested in checking out that Q&A, it's on the hyperlink there. And I think I'll pause here before we get into any new courses or electives to answer any questions about the CD, because it is a lot of information.
I just want to chime in here, Mr. Cohat, and say that, Mr. Kalishman, you and I had conversations about, if we don't stick with the coursework, that is saying that our coursework is less rigorous than possibly other communities. The other thing that's a little bit frustrating from my perspective is this feels very similar to COVID. It's a local decision right now. and then they will come out with some directives down the road. I mean, we made it through COVID with local decisions, but everybody was doing something different. So it feels really good to hear Mr. Kohat say that his colleagues across the state are approaching in this in a very similar manner. That's all I had to say.
Well, at least on the North Shore. I'm not sure
Yes.
about other districts, but yeah, I can speak to like the local ones.
The roundtable locally, North Shore.
Yeah,
Sorry about
right,
that.
right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
This is actually, I think, Suzanne, more for you. But do we need to codify this with a school committee policy?
Yeah, I mean, we have a policy. Why am I repeating? Sorry, you guys, I'm reverberating.
I see you on there twice.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. There we go.
How do I get off?
Joe, I think as the host, you need to remove one of the Suzannes.
There's actually 3 of them, so I'll do what I can.
Hey, Suzanne's. Oh, my goodness.
You guys are so
There's
lucky.
nothing she
Can
won't
you
get
imagine
done
how
now.
much we'll get done?
Right.
I know. That's what I was saying.
You can vote a majority now.
She's going to build 2 more schools.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry, but you guys are lucky.
Suzanne,
let's-
you have your volume on something else, like your phone or an iPad. You're hooked up to 2 sources. You need to turn your volumes down.
I don't.
All right.
Uh,
Well,
Latanya, it
I
says
got it.
there's no option to remove, but there's a withdraw co-host permission. Should I do that first?
Yes.
Okay, there's one.
Thanks, LT, for sticking around.
There's another one. All right, try it now, Suzanne.
Can you hear me?
better.
Smaller echo.
It's so weird. Yeah, Amy, you're right. We have a policy that has graduation requirements and we just have to update it.
Great. Anybody else have any questions about this particular topic?
Len, just a quick one for Mr. Kohat. So, Mr. Kohat, it doesn't look like these are huge hurdles to overcome, but what if the scenario presented where the student didn't meet these requirements? What would happen then?
So they would have to do some sort of credit recovery course to make the credits up to earn that CD. So if the student, let's say, didn't pass the course, then they would have to pass it probably over the summer, which is typically what we do with credit recovery.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Cohart.
You're
Feel
welcome.
free to continue.
So we have a few new courses. I think in the past we've presented many more new courses, and we definitely have classes that are popular. And we're trying to, as I mentioned, have more kids in electives. But I always like to try to keep current, right? And we've had some teachers submit some ideas for new courses for next year. Now, I want to make it clear that it doesn't mean that these courses are definitely going to run, right? It's all about enrollment. If the kids are interested in them, if we have the staffing, then they will run. First one here is a teaching assistant in chemistry, an engineering and 3D design 1 course. The English department has always been great in suggesting new courses. One is a modern reading of A Tale of Two Cities. I think that is a book that feels very timely right now, given everything that's happening in the world. An advanced composition class. Now, this is not the AP class. This is a semester writing class that's a little bit more rigorous. Another course that I don't know how many Taylor Swift fans we have on the Zoom, but I know we have many at Swampscott High School. And this is Popular Art, Taylor Swift as Literature. So this is analyzing Taylor Swift's songwriting as poetry. There are colleges that run courses like this for a number of other like pop culture folks as well. I think that's going to be a popular one. I know, as you all know, we have new work happening to the auditorium, new sound system being put in. One of the classes suggested by Mr. Dulett is live sound engineering. So that's using the board and the other audio equipment to, or teaching students to do that while performances are happening. And the phys ed department is proposing an open power hour phys ed elective. In terms of the course selection timeline, this is what it will look like. Beginning on February 10th, for the better part of the month of February, students will meet with their core teachers to discuss course recommendations. Last year, we made sure to align this. So now we have essentially a form that we'd like students and teachers to use as a springboard for those conversations. And we will also open up Aspen on February 10th so that students can choose electives. Rachel and I are going to record a course selection webinar and share it with all families. So that will go out on the 10th. So that's overall how to go about the process of enrolling in classes, seeing recommendations, and choosing electives. Week of the 24th, Ms. Sturma and I will go to the middle school and meet with the 8th graders to talk about this process and then answer any questions. And for essentially the whole month of March, school counselors will be meeting with every single student, except for our seniors, to talk about course selection, talk about electives, and talk about schedule building. In March, grade 8 course selection will begin at the middle school. Also in March, our Innovation Pathways team will head to SMS to present the IP program and encourage students who are interested to enroll in it. And the end of the month, March 28th, course placement review forms are due. So that's paperwork where if a student or family does not agree with the course recommendation, they can, what we used to call it, overriding. They can override that. It's just a process to follow. And we have that on March 28th so that we have enough time to build the schedule. And then the schedule building will be April to May. And the goal, of course, is to have a schedule ready for everyone before we leave for the summer in June.
All right,
that's the presentation. Any questions about the timeline or any of the courses?
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Kohat?
I do. Mr. Kohat, can you talk a little bit about how you guys this new phys ed the power hour? I'm curious. I know that last year there was some restructuring in that department that caused a lot of anxiety and included an unfortunate layoff. How did we make this work?
Well, we haven't yet. So running the courses is always subject to how many kids enroll and staffing. So because we're putting this course in the program of studies doesn't necessarily mean it will run. But I'm hopeful that we can do that. But I think there's some things that still have to fall in place before we can definitely do it.
However, this might be the sharing of the elementary PE teachers to make that happen. Is that, am I misspeaking, Mr. Kohat? I mean, we have talked to them about supporting the high school with kind of an open gym or an open power hour. So this is where we're going to be doing cross-district assistance to give the kids what they need at the high school.
It could be that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to misspeak.
No, I'll misspeak. I'll speak. We've been talking about it, and we've actually spoken to the elementary teachers, and they're very on board and helping out.
Well, I can't imagine that it would not be a course that kids would want to take.
Right.
So I appreciate the fact that there's some creative thinking to how to make that work, because, what we heard from the teachers in that department last year was very dire. So sounds like it's on the upswing.
Well, and it feels like it's it is being felt and it is being missed tremendously, and we needed to come up with a creative way to solve it. And so I do think it will happen. I do think it will be popular. Do I think it will be enough? No, but it will be something for our kids. So we'll work out the details, but definitely that is the cross level support that teachers are giving their colleagues.
And my other question, Mr. Cohet, is about the advanced composition writing class, which is pretty
Yes.
exciting. Is that going to be something that juniors can take? I'm thinking about having just gone through the whole college process.
Yeah, bear with me 1 second, Amy, because I'd have to go. Let me look. Actually, I can't do that because I'm sharing my screen. I'd have to get back to you because I don't know how it's written, but ideally, yes, we would try to open it up to as many kids as we can. That's
Exciting.
that's our goal, but I don't know exactly what it says in the program of studies. I'd have to go look.
I pulled it up. We're proposing grades 9 through 12.
Oh, good.
Oh, okay. So it's everybody. Great.
That's really exciting.
Very. Any other questions for Mr. Cohen? Okay, I just have really one comment. One of my favorite books of all times is A Tale of Two Cities. So I'm really curious what the new reading is. And then I think it's great that we are trying to stay as current as possible and having a Taylor Swift class. I think I've shared before, when one of my kids, one of the twins was in college, he took a Bob Dylan class for credit. So I think this is a great thing. I think I agree with you, Mr. Cohen. I think you're going to have a lot of people who are interested.
Exciting.
Great. Okay. Anything
Thank
else
you.
from you, Mr. Cohen?
That is all.
Thank you both for attending. Appreciate it.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Take care.
My
Okay,
next, I
Superintendent.
just have a couple of general updates that I didn't put formally in writing tonight. Just to update you on the fact that Mr. Kalishman has been looped in on my meetings with Jeff Vaughn and Nia Illingworth. We continue to roll out the idea of the mental health after school 10-week program. That will begin. We've targeted April right now. I think I mentioned at the last meeting that we would be hiring, we would be posting for a stipend because this course will be taught by an outside vendor, but we would like to have somebody on staff attending that class as well, just for the safety of our kids and just to kind of oversee it. Additionally, we're talking about trauma-informed training for our staff, one of the PD days before school begins, and then probably the first PD day in October. So we would be rolling that out. The storybook theater will not, no, drug story theater, storybook. You can tell I'm an elementary teacher. Drug story theater was originally intended for the high school, but with the auditorium rehab, the timing's not going to work. So what they are going to do is perform at the 8th grade. And Mr. Kalishman has approved that. They've coordinated a date. I believe it's March 10th. And so the 8th graders will benefit from that program. And then in the fall, we'll try to do the high school. We'll try to schedule the high school again. So that's that update. The other update I have for you is it's more to inform you that, I deliberately have not sent out a communication about ICE and coming into the schools because every webinar we've attended, every legal brief I've received, every guidance I've received have cautioned the superintendents about giving legal advice. What I do plan to do is send out just a quick parent square saying that, your children are safe because everything that we've attended, and some of us attended a webinar together yesterday, is that they can't get into the school buildings without a judicial warrant. And as I've spoken with Mr. Officer Wilson, the first thing we're going to do if anybody steps on school property is call the police and call Brian. And unless they have a judicial warrant, they are not coming into our schools. And I need to check with our attorney that I would go so far to say, just like with the media, we don't allow them on school property. I would imagine it would be the same thing for any ICE department that we're trying to get on school property. But Brian Wilson said the protocol is you notify the superintendent's office and the superintendent calls the police department and calls me. That's as far as we go. There's been lots of advice, but even it was the Attorney General's office speaking to us in a webinar the other day, and they're like, this is not legal advice. Do not give legal advice. All you need to tell the families is the kids are safe. They can't get in without a judicial warrant, and call the police and they will deal with it. So I just wanted the committee to know for the last 2 weeks, we've been inundated between competency determination and immigration, and every 24 hours, the news is changing and the directives are changing. So I didn't want you to think that the district was ignoring it. And I will get something out very simply to say those things that, call the superintendent's office, just as you do with the media. Superintendent's going to call the police department and our resource officer, and I'll clarify with Darren Klein about being on school property, but they cannot get in the schools. So just wanted to inform you about that it's not fallen on deaf ears. A lot of districts have done different things. I think I've seen some of the communications and they make me cringe a little bit because I don't know if what they're sending out might change tomorrow. So right now, that's where it stands. I just wanted the committee to know that.
Great. Thank you, Superintendent. I just want to add that, and this is to really the entire community. We are a safe zone. Our school district will continue and always teach each and every child and each and every student, and that is our job. And we will protect each and every student to the best of our ability. So thank you, Pam, for sharing that.
And that concludes my report tonight.
Okay.
Amy?
I know it's the same kind of whiplash that everybody is feeling, but as there's all sorts of discussion going on on the national level about the Department of Education, what kind of conversations are you and your colleagues having? Is it just just wait and see like the rest of the country?
It is a wait and see. And the perfect example of that, and I think this is where what we're all feeling, and I know Cheryl was a big part of this, is, the freeze on the federal funds. No sooner was Ms. Stella on the phone with the town, the decision got overturned. Now, I do know, there is dismantling at the federal level, CIA, the FBI, and now it's the Department of Education, but we're all kind of holding on to the table, waiting to see what's next. And I think for me, after all these years, to get distracted by the what ifs, that's one thing that I'm trying to coach Mr. Kalishman on. You can't worry about what's to come. You have to face what's in front of you right now. And, we were on a North Shore Consortium meeting yesterday morning, and it's a very tight-knit group. So the minute something breaks, we'd all be in touch and work together the same way we did through COVID. But there have been so many flip-flops, it feels like, for us, worried about our federal funds. Then we're not worried about our federal funds. And it's 30 days, then it's overturned. So right now we're just white knuckling it and waiting to see what comes.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions for the superintendent? Okay. So with that, and I'm going to ask for your deference if I read these incorrectly. We are now going to jump into the public hearing on school choice for the years 25, 26. There will be a public hearing on school choice for the years 2025, 2026, according to Chapter 76, Section 12B of the Massachusetts General Laws. All interested persons shall be given an opportunity to be heard. Can someone please make a motion to open the school choice public hearing?
I'll make the motion.
Can someone second, please?
Second.
All right. Again, I have to do a roll call vote. Amy?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
John?
You were
John,
muted.
you're muted there, John.
Yes.
Thank you. And I will vote yes as well. It is unanimous. So the first thing we do need to ask, if anyone in the audience wishes to make a public comment on this particular subject only, school choice, can you please raise your hand? Doing a quick check.
I don't see anything.
I don't see anything. Okay, great. Discussion presentations by the school committee or superintendent. Superintendent, you're up.
We're at an interesting juncture for this discussion right now.
Right.
Historically, I have recommended to the school committee that they not support school choice for various reasons. And that is that with our 3 elementary schools, we had no capacity. And then going into the new elementary school, my intent always has been and continues to be tonight to want to build our METCO programs. And if there are open seats to fill them with our students from Boston. I just lost my train of thought. Anyway, I maintain that. School choice allows people to pick a school district outside their own district that they would like to attend. What I preface this with is that Mr. Kalishman and I have been having a lot of discussions, and he has some really great questions. And so moving into next year, he's going to do a lot of research on that. But for at this point, I'm staying the course. I have concerns about budgetary implications that I probably need to know more about, and Mr. Kalishman and Ms. Stella are going to dig into that over the next year. I have my commitment to our Boston program and really supporting those students. I have gained the knowledge that you can limit the seats at each grade level. Knowing the budget struggles we're going through and challenges this year, and we've gone through every year in my tenure, I hesitate to add in one other outside component, not knowing what the needs of these students are. And is it going to impact our budget in a particular department, or is it going to impact our budget overall? I do know you get the money for these students, but my concern as we look at special education costs is just like anybody that comes into the district, we don't know their needs. And so I'm sure there's advantages to school choice. At this point for next year, I am not recommending school choice. And that's my recommendation to the school.
Great. Thank you, Superintendent. Any comments from the school committee?
I have a question. Do we know what does the state pay us for each incoming student?
It's I believe right now it's $5,000, and then depending on the level of services that the student receives, you also get incremental compensation, and that's a formula that they have.
But I would imagine that like for special education, that is also happening a year later than the money's actually spent. You know,
it's based off the IEP and the level of services the student has coming to the district.
I should also say that it wouldn't impact the budget transportation wise because they do need to provide their own transportation.
Right.
My focus just has been laser focused on my commitment once that new elementary school was built is to build our Boston program. And I still feel very committed to that.
It's a wild discrepancy between what the government is willing to give a district versus what it costs per student to educate.
Absolutely.
Do I understand correctly? Like the METCO program has nothing to do with school choice. That can expand.
No, it doesn't.
Right. Okay.
But I go back to the Tara Cisco days when we had a substantial program. I think at its highest, we probably had 70 kids, and we started, I think, at 54. I see Miss Lynch on here, and we've lost a few kids. So it is about getting, building that program to build our school district and diversify it, dare I say.
That's a great point, and I hope we can get as many students from Boston and the METCO program as possible. Any other thoughts or comments from the school committee? Okay, hearing none, can someone make a motion to close the public hearing on school choice?
I think we have to vote first, don't we?
Yeah, I think you vote.
We have to vote not to
Oh yeah, okay. You're right. I read the wrong order. That's okay. Thank you very much for
I'll
that.
make a motion not to adopt school choice for the 25-26 school year.
Great,
I'll
thank you.
second.
Someone second.
Wait, yeah,
I'll second
25-26.
it.
Oh my
Right.
God.
Someone second, please.
I will.
Great, thank you, Amy. All right, can we have to do a roll call vote? Again, we are voting to not participate in school choice for the 2025-2026 school year. Amy,
Yes.
great. Suzanne,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes. So it is unanimous. We will not. The Swampscott School District will not participate in school choice for the year of 2025-2026. Now, can someone please make a motion to close the hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the hearing on
Can
school
some-
choice.
Thank you. Someone second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. Thank you. Amy,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
John, Karen?
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. It is unanimous, and the meeting on school choice public hearing is so closed. Okay. Thank you very much, Superintendent. All right, next, public hearing on the school budget for 2025-2026. There will be a public hearing on the school budget for the year 2025-2026, according to Chapter 71, Section 38N of the Massachusetts General Laws. All interested persons shall be given the opportunity to be heard. Can someone please make a motion to open the school budget public hearing?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Can someone second?
I'll second.
Great, thank you. So we're going to vote again. Roll call. Suzanne,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes. It is unanimous. So we are now open to the public hearing on the school budget. So now, pursuant to the law, I am going to open up public comment on this subject only. I do ask if anyone has a comment. Again, they keep it on this subject open. I do ask that they keep their comments brief. We will go no longer than 15 minutes of public comment. So if you could keep it to 60, 90 seconds, I would greatly appreciate that. So if anyone has a comment out in the public, can you please raise your hand?
Chair, I don't see anybody currently raising their hand, but I also wonder if there might be comment afterwards. Since many people have not yet heard any budget discussion. I don't know if that's something you want to entertain.
I would be willing to entertain that if this is one of those things that I think I can make that decision, but I really would like to just get a feeling of how everyone thinks about this. So I do not see any hands whatsoever. Go ahead, Ms. Angelakis.
I was just going to say, and Ms. Stella, correct me if I'm wrong, after the budget presentation on January 23rd, the budget book is made available to everybody to pick up in the business office and the superintendent's office. And the process being, if you're interested in coming to the public hearing and speaking and engaging in a dialogue with the committee about the budget, then you pick up the budget book and come with your questions. What is on the agenda later is public comment, where you would not engage in a conversation. The whole difference between a public hearing is we do engage in a conversation and give answers to those questions. So my recommendation would be, if they have questions about the budget, given our other presentations, given the questions we've answered for town committees, then they should ask those questions now. Otherwise, they can ask at public comment questions that the committee is not supposed to comment on. And that's just my recommendation.
Thank you, Superintendent. Again, I don't see any hands. I'm actually going to agree with the superintendent on this one. I do want to give just everybody one last shot at the apple here. If someone does want to speak, can you please raise your hand? I see, I do. All right, Chris Crocker,
Robotics, he must have missed that.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Let's see if I can do that.
Oh, he just put
Here.
his hand down.
He just
Okay,
disappeared.
Chris.
That might have been an accident. Nope.
Oh, he's
Okay.
back.
There he is
Oh,
again.
you're back. All right, Chris, hold on one sec, okay? I gotta find you again, and let's allow to talk. All right, Chris, can you just introduce yourself, please?
Yes, my name's Chris Crocker. I am a teacher of robotics at the high school. I just wanted to say that I know that we're talking about budget this evening, and I want to just let you guys know that the impact that the budget changes that I believe are going to happen on the robotics team are going to make an enormous impact and change a lot of students' lives. I know that this will go very, very far. I've seen great things come through the program, and I just want to say thank you for what I think is your support. I also heard that you were looking for me earlier, so I wanted to come on and make sure that my voice is heard.
Great. Well, thank you, Chris. And just to jump back, we did accept a donation from Mr. Ford, Mr. Ritchie, and the Duran Family Foundation for $5,500 specifically earmarked for the robotics club. So we just wanted to do that first and early. But I really do appreciate your comments. We all think that that robotics is just an important part of the school experience. So thank you very much for your comment.
Can
Thank
I
you.
say something, Glenn?
Absolutely.
Mr. Crocker is highlighting something that's really important in school, and that's electives. And I know that our superintendent believes the same with the After Dark program and all the sort of vocational type of activities that we're trying to promote for kids that aren't always on the track to college, or kids that are on the track to college and want to leg up, like with the robotics program. And I think that this is a really important part of our budget that, we need to make a commitment to keep these programs, which is really hard to do when we're having budget issues because, reading, writing, and math sort of takes the front stage. And I think we just need to appreciate that what Mr. Crocker's saying about this program making a difference in kids' life is really true.
I would just echo that and talk about the innovation pathways. And I know I've said it to anyone that would listen to me, to the boards and committees of the towns, that I am not even considering touching those programs. That was done many, many years ago in 2005, 2006. And I agree with you, Ms. Wright, that they make our district special. They make it unique. They offer a well-rounded choices for our students, and I'm super proud of that.
Yeah, Suzanne, I could not agree with you more, and thank you for bringing that up. We are in the business of well-rounded students, and electives plays a humongous role in that. So thank you, Suzanne, for bringing that up. Thank you, Chris, as well. I appreciate it.
Yeah, can I just say that I agree that we have to not look at these types of classes as extras. These are core basic skills that these kids need to learn. They keep the kids in school, they keep them interested, and we need to look at it that way when we're building budgets, which is what we're trying to do.
Exactly. Thank you, Karen. Again, thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
All right. I do see one more person. Okay, hold on, please. Please state your name.
Catherine Gwynn.
Catherine, I would ask you to put your camera on, please.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Are we all set?
We still do not see you.
But we didn't see Chris, so.
That's okay. All right, so go ahead, Ms. Quinn.
Okay, yeah. No, I just would like to add in support of what the other people are saying. I think an elective can be the one reason that'll get a kid who's sort of stressed and not feeling like going to school, if it's their band day or their robotics day or their whatever, their special thing that's working for them at that moment. That's the thing that'll get them to school. So I think it's very important to make sure we're continuing to provide those programs. Thank you.
Could not agree more with you, Miss Quinn. 100%. Thank you very much. All right. All right. Seeing no other hands raised, we will close that part of our discussion, and I will turn this portion over to the superintendent and to Ms. Stella.
Okay, so we are going to do that follow-up presentation. Ms. Stella, do you want to share yours so you can be in control of it? I'll give a little introduction that following our January 23rd presentation, Ms. Stella was taking note during the meeting of some questions that needed to be clarified or people were asking to be clarified from the boards and committees. And so I think it was within 24 hours, she developed this presentation trying to answer more of the questions or comments that came up at that January 23rd meeting. Ms. Stella?
Thank you. Yeah, and I just want to say that I do appreciate everyone with their questions. I can really understand why school finance can be quite difficult to wrap your head around. Having worked in private sector and then town finance, I can say that school finance is totally different. There are a lot of things that our hands are tied and we must fund, and sometimes that's really difficult to also wrap your head around how quickly things can change in a given day. So I just want to say, I appreciate all the questions. Hopefully this helps continue to answer some of those questions. But school finance is a very complex world and not like private sector finance or town municipal finance. So some of the questions that I wanted to discuss tonight, there's talk about, the per pupil calculation and what's an in-district versus out-of-district student, the net school spending calculation, net school spending versus per pupil, a little bit more information on circuit breaker and then circuit breaker versus what a special education reserve fund is. There was some comments about our enrollment and staffing graph. So I wanted to present that using our in-district enrollment only. There's questions about comparing ourselves, our per pupil calculation to Linfield. And then there was some discussion around if we include tech in our capital plan, then it's not in our per pupil calculation. So thank you to our wonderful IT director. She went out and did a lot of research on this to highlight what other communities do fund this through capital. So just to dive into the actual per pupil calculation just a little bit more, and I won't read everything here on the screen to everyone, but it is the average FTEs throughout the school year for the pupils that we do have enrolled in our school. They do two different calculations. One is just an in-district per pupil, and one is a total per pupil calculation. The only difference is that the total per pupil calculation includes all of the out-of-district expenditures. As I had mentioned previously, there are only a few categories that are excluded from this calculation, which is community services, our fixed assets, debt service. One thing I did want to make clear, because I'm not sure if it was clear, is that when we talk about out-of-district students, it's not students that attend private schools. The only students that get counted in this calculation that attend private schools are those that attend specifically special education schools. So these are our students that we bear the cost of educating. And then the net school spending calculation, the basis for that is what they call our foundation budget, which is the state has this mandate that every school district should have adequate funding based off that specific districts or communities' size and overall student population. And they base that on the community's ability to raise tax revenue, the property values within that town, income values. There's two components of it. It's the required local contribution and then the Chapter 70, and between the two of them, when you add them together, that is the net school spending requirement. Every city and town has what the state determines as their target local share that they must contribute to this calculation. The maximum is 82.5%. Swampscott's local contribution is 80%. And again, it's based off, when they look at this, what is that town's ability to contribute to educating their students, to provide what they consider adequate education. And so there is some debate on whether you should look at net school spending or per pupil. I'm of the mindset generally that you look at all of the data points. I wouldn't look at any one in isolation to see if they overall tell a story. But this was actually something I presented last year to the committee. And I also did want to highlight again that there is significant discussion on what is the better measure. And according to some, it's actually the net school spending versus the per pupil, because they feel that it's a more meaningful way to determine how much a district is spending or a community is spending on their students above what is called the foundation budget. And that's because it's looking at how does this community, how much should they be spending based on their peers? And one of the big things that this article specifically that I linked at the bottom talked about is that the districts that are ranked high in some of those best school lists, they typically have the highest percent above net school spending. Next, I just wanted to talk a little bit about special education costs and circuit breaker. And I know that Ms. Raymond also did go over this the other night, but I just thought it might be another good little refresher here. And this is all information direct from DESE. Anyone can pull this up themselves, but 1 out of every 5 students has some kind of disability that impacts their ability to make educational progress. And so there's a wide range of settings with which you service these students. Some it's just services within the general education classroom. Some are in substantially separate programs. And as we talked a lot about the other night, some with real significant disabilities attend outside placements in a private special education program. And the most expensive of them being residential programs. You know, DESE recognizes that special education costs are substantial and growing significantly, and they provide support to districts through different funding streams, one being the Chapter 70, the other being Circuit Breaker, the IDA grant, which we talked about the other night, and then MuniMed, which is effectively Medicaid, our Medicaid reimbursements. DESE and DLS both have put out guidance on this as far as what communities should try to hold as a circuit breaker balance. And DLS does advise communities to try and build balances up in circuit breaker when they can, so that when they have those downturns or they have really high costs that they just didn't expect, they have that as the buffer to cover unforeseen costs. And they view that basically as a good fiscal management practice for any community or district. And so what is the difference between a special education reserve versus circuit breaker balance for the district? So the circuit breaker allows increased flexibility for us as a district. We can handle those really unexpected swings in any costs very easily and nimbly. If there's volatility within the state budget, this really helps the district guard against those. There's no additional authorizations that we need to access that money. We are able to build up a 1 year worth of reimbursements. It is always subject to appropriation at the state level, although I don't know of any time with which the state has not funded circuit breaker, at least to some degree. And like I mentioned before, DESE and DLS both do support building up this account balance as an overall good management practice. One thing it does do, which we have not done in many, many years in this district, but other districts do, and it is allowable, is you can prepay tuition for 3 months for the next fiscal year, which helps soften the budget burden if you have some additional funds in your circuit breaker.
Cheryl, can I just ask a quick question? Do you know the last time that the district had the funds to prepay some payments of tuition?
I think it was FY22.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
And then a special, oh, go ahead.
I do
Sorry.
remember that when Martha Seibert was here, that there was prepayment happening. I do remember that discussion during our budget meetings. So that would jibe with 2022.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Amy.
And so then a special education reserve fund can be used for the same types of expenses, but does differ from circuit breaker in that it is another reserve fund. So that looks great for the town and overall looks good to have some good additional savings there. It does provide an additional stopgap for us if we have some real out of the norm costs in the district. As I mentioned the other night, we are limited in the balance, and it's 2% of net school spending, which for us is a little over $700,000. It doesn't have a direct revenue source except for our Medicaid reimbursements. So to build that balance up in that fund, it needs other sources besides just Medicaid reimbursements like free cash. It is subject to appropriation at the local level. So then we're going to town meeting looking for the vote for the free cash. And then the way we access that is a bit different. We don't have readily available access to a special education reserve fund. It requires the majority vote of the school committee, as well as the select board or their designee.
So, Ms. Stella, can you remind us if Swampscott as a town does not vote to add money to our special education reserve fund, it is funded otherwise by our Medicaid reimbursements.
Right.
And that totals out to be about what per year?
About 70 to 80,000.
So really, we're talking about 10 years of adding to that with Medicaid, of never touching it in order to reach a 2% safety net.
Correct.
Yeah, that's okay.
To say we're dependent on the town in town meeting agreeing year over year to fund that.
Yes.
Right. And I just want to dovetail off that, Karen, is what would happen if the select board or their designee denies access to the funds?
Then we can't access them.
All right. Thank you.
Then we make cuts in order to pay for things that happen.
Great. Okay. Just clarifying that for the audience. Thank you.
But to be fair, I wouldn't imagine that would be a position that we would be in.
I wouldn't imagine that either, Amy. I'm just throwing that out there for public consumption.
I will say we did access this fund last year, about $109,000. It was a fairly seamless process. So I will say that the process that we have followed last fiscal year was relatively easy to follow.
Great. Thank you, Cheryl.
Welcome. And so there was a discussion about, we had shown this similar graph, but it was our in-district and out-of-district enrollment mapped against our FTEs. And so I adjusted this graph just to show the in-district enrollment, as well as softened our FTE decline. While the line perhaps does not look as severe as the other one, I think it still does highlight that our enrollment is increasing and our FTEs are decreasing.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate, because I know that there was some criticism last week from the audience about this number, but it doesn't change the fact that we still have lost 40 FTEs since 2023. No matter what the bar looks like, it's 40 FTEs. And
right.
I feel like I appreciate, Ms. Stella, that you did this, but it doesn't take away the pain.
And then there's a question about why is Linfield's per pupil so much lower than Swampscott's, even though their average teacher salary is much higher than Swampscott's. And at the time, having not dove into their per pupil calculation, my initial answer was they had 30 less teacher FTEs, which when you actually do compare each category, you can see that. Their 30 less FTEs does play a significant impact in the fact that their overall per pupil is less than ours. I will say that if anyone has been watching what's going on in Linfield, I don't anticipate that there'll be this level of differential between Linfield's per pupil and Swampscott's as we look at 25 and 26. I do know that they have talked about how they cut many positions in their core subject areas and are having to add those back this year to the tune of an incredibly large overall budget increase. The second piece of the calculation that it plays into why Linfield's per pupil is so much less than Swampscott's is the insurance retirement bucket. And what's actually really driving this when I looked into it is the retirement obligation or the portion of retirement that's part of the Linfield per pupil calculation. Overall, Linfield is paying $1 million less in retirement than Swampscott Public Schools. They are part of the Essex retirement system versus we have Swampscott's system. I'm not sure why their allocation for retirement overall is so much less, but if you do look and compare their towns' pension obligation versus Swampscott's, it's significantly less as well. So because ours is much higher, that also factors into the differential between the two per pupil calculations. Insurance plays a small piece of this. Insurance was about $288,000 less in total for Linfield versus Swampscott, which is far less than the $1 million. But again, it's probably likely due to the fact that in 2023, their FTEs were lower.
I just want to, before you go any further, Cheryl, I do want to thank you and the superintendent and to several members of the school committee, including myself, who really started to dig into these numbers after this was mentioned at our tri-committee meeting a week or so ago. And I know there were some follow-up questions from both the select board and the finance committee that took a lot of time, a lot of effort for us to find. I remind everybody that one town is very different than another town, which is very different from the city, which is very different from really anything else. And that's what makes us, Ms. Stella said earlier, coming to a school budget is a challenge. There are some numbers we just don't know. But I just want to publicly thank you, Ms. Stella, for all the hard work that you did digging into this particular slide.
Can I add to that?
Of course, Amy.
So there are a number of people I know who are already familiar with some of the data that I'd like to share. As I shared this with our select board and with members of our finance committee, but I think that people who tuned in last week to our group meeting may not be familiar with this. I know I speak for everybody on this panel in saying that to compare us, to cherry pick one town to compare us to is really not best practice. However, in this case, despite the fact that there were a few people who would like to point at us and say, well, why aren't you more like Linfield? Why aren't you more like Linfield? I'd like to call out a couple of things. We're very happy to be compared to Linfield because consistently we receive much less money budget-wise than they do. And they have grown by between 3.5% to 4% over the last 5 years, whereas our budget has grown by 2.5% to 3.5%. So we also have lost 30 FTEs. To your point, 40 FTEs. To your point also, Ms. Stella, we know that this is changing. We know, for example, that their administration is changing. They've already hired a senior technology administrator. So we know that that's going to change. Well, we've cut some of ours, so that's going to change. But I would like to point out that as some of our select board members and finance committee members are happy to point to us and wonder why our budget isn't as efficient as it is, and points to Linfield, that Swampscott actually outspends Swampscott Fire outspends Linfield Fire by $2 million a year, or 100%. That Swampscott Police outspends Linfield Police by $400,000, or 11%.
You mean Linfield? I'm sorry, Amy. Linfield outspends.
No, Swampscott outspends.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry.
So Swampscott outspends us. But the criticism is coming, but Swampscott outspends Linfield in all other capacities: fire by 100%, police by 11%, general government by 27%, and those fixed costs that Ms. Stella just talked about by 17%. So while the eyes are on us and saying, maybe we should have, maybe we need to dig into this budget a little bit more, it's interesting to me that the places that they actually do control they're outspending this quote unquote better managed town and spending. You can't tell me that spending 100% more on fire is not something that should be looked into. So the one place where Linfield outspends us is on schools. So go ahead and compare us to that town, because I would like their budget.
All right. Thank you, Amy.
And they include $650,000 per year in their capital spending for technology. So the idea of picking and choosing and saying, well, it doesn't include this and it doesn't include that, it's pretty comparable. They outspend us on schools. We outspend them on everything else. So this myth of Swampscott, this story that has been told for the last 5 years by our former town manager is really erroneous. And I would like to push people to knock it off.
I think also, Amy, I just want to add, like, I appreciate you diving into Linfield because we have been hearing about that town for a while. But also, I just want to remind everyone that we're bargaining with a couple different units, right? And as an agreement, we've agreed to what our peer communities are. You know, we've been looking at communities based on incomes and average median households and size of the student population and the town population, and so we actually do compare ourselves to comparable communities, and we're smack dab in the middle. And I think like that's an important data point too. You know, we're not high against our peer communities, or I mean, I think that I think everyone's suffering right now because times are tough, and
yeah, I think that's an important thing to point out, Suzanne, especially because we do have to compare ourselves to other communities in order to make sure that we are being we're being smart and that we're spending money smartly. So yeah, this is, to your point.
That we can retain good teachers and
but to choose one town over another is really not a game that I think that we should be playing. But I watched the Linfield School Committee meeting from a week ago, and they anticipate that their budget, if they were going to stay flat, is going to grow by 4.6% this year. So that's about where we anticipate our budget to grow. But they also anticipate that in order to satisfy their contractual obligations with their teachers and all of their educators, that their budget is actually going to grow by 7.8%, which is wildly above what we're looking for. So I would like to, again, say if we would like to use Linfield as the goalpost, I'm happy to take that number.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like we've been pushed into this conversation. We use comparables because it informs us. It allows us to talk to the various units with information. It allows us to show to the town where we fall so that we can show that we're not at the high and that we're not at the low. But again, then seems like it's always sort of used against us, and one is picked to say, well, why aren't you here? And then, when you dig into it, you find out, Amy found out. And I think it is this myth that the town side is extremely efficient and the schools are somehow not, or bloated. It just because we're the largest piece of the budget doesn't mean that it's overinflated. It's not at all. So I think that's just an important point to make.
I remember about 6 years ago, maybe even longer now, town meeting created the Article 6 committee to look at efficiencies in town, and the outcome of one of the outcomes of that was a joint facilities, which was great, right? But the whole point of that committee was because we're speeding towards a brick wall and we need to slow it down, because this is a small town. We don't have land. We don't have, commercial. It's just we're speeding towards a brick wall. And I appreciate the fiscal responsibility, and I appreciate the 2+ new growth. I mean, that's important. And especially as someone who was on the school building committee, that got us the school. And that's all great. But in the last 5 years, I think all of us have at different points been chair of this committee, and we've sat with the other chairs and we said, this is happening. This is coming. We can't sustain ourselves with this. And we appreciate every single dime that they have sort of absorbed into their budget, like the special ed reserve, or like helping us with capital requests like technology, or helping us with electrical. We appreciate that, but we have been saying we're closing in on the brick wall. And we've also been asking to have a financial summit with everyone, because we need to do a reset. Like, we can't keep doing 2% per new growth, even if the town is giving us literally more than 2% is sort of how it's working out, but we can't do it. And we've been asking to have a summit and really talk about, how do you reset, like every 3 years, every 5 years, every 10 years? And it's tough without a town administrator, but I was really encouraged last year. Eric Hartman was great. Dave Grisham was great when I was meeting with them, and they really sort of understood that we need to do this. And I know that other chairs felt like it was coming too, and then it didn't. And it didn't for a lot of different reasons, but it didn't. And now we're really close to the brick wall. So, and I wish we had this conversation when we wanted to have it before budget season, but we didn't. So here we are, and we're at a crossroads where we've cut what we can cut, or I guess we haven't cut because we're a zero-based budget, but we built programs and we have stuff that we don't want to, that we need. And I guess I'm just ranting, but
Suzanne, I think that was well said, that this has been a wall that we've seen coming for a long time. And, Karen and I were talking about this offline, and she said it really well when she said, what's happening is that for the last couple of years, by taking out, like, oh, let's take $200,000 and put it into this reserve fund, knowing full well that it was going to be used. Or let's take this money and move it here and take this money and move it there. It's basically a shell game. And for some reason, a way to pretend that the budget isn't growing the way that it is growing. And every year we've agreed to it. But what happens is that every year we come back and then it causes us to beg again and again and again for the same money that we've been begging for.
I agree. Yeah, the town, or it seems to be that the thought process is that we cannot increase our base budget. We cannot increase our run rate. That they're, we're going to give you access to $2,000 over here, and it's essentially one-time money. Or, we'll help you over here, and then something comes into capital, comes out of capital, it goes back into capital based on the whim of, whatever's going on that year. But at the end of the day, the base budget has to increase. And it has to increase, and it has to be there next year, and on and on and on. It cannot be these one-time creative ideas to just get us through the current year that we're budgeting for. And that's just not working. It just digs at the hole deeper and deeper every year. I feel like we're just starting over every year when we begin our talks. And at the end of the day, I mean, it's not honest. It's not truthfully telling what our budget is and needs to be. And so, the 4.79 that we're at is the number. And, in my mind as a school committee member, but also as a citizen, that is what the town needs to fund for the school district.
I just want to add one thing, and I know I've repeated this a million times to the committee, is that on top of those 40 reductions that we did, we were also using ESSER funds to subsidize our allocation. So it was, I think that's been lost on a lot of people. We were lucky to have ESSER funds through FY24, I believe, or 24, which I believe. And if you look back historically, Ms. Stella has produced for all of us how many dollars in ESSER funds we used while still reducing our force. And so it's kind of a compounded thing. We can't ignore that the dollar amount that we were using from ESSER funds.
Well, Superintendent, I think that plays a really important part of the story because, the reality was that during COVID, because of those ESSER funds, the town, anticipating a lack of income, asked us to reduce our budget, which we did, because we knew that the federal government was supporting us in doing that. But then, even though those dollars came back in terms of what the town was able to, the income that the town was able to raise, didn't come back to us. So it was like all of a sudden those ESSER funds went, and it's like, oh, well, those ESSER funds are gone. You knew they were you knew they were running out without having acknowledged the fact that our budget was slimmed down, knowing that those monies came in.
Right. John, go ahead.
Just add on, Amy, I just thank you for that information on the comparison to Linfield. Coming out of that meeting a couple of weeks ago, I was a little disappointed. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say it was a distraction by introducing Linfield into the discussion like this, but it felt like that. And I think your data provided some clarity to this discussion, which I think is very, very helpful. So thank you for that. And
the kudos are to Miss Stella.
Stella as well. So, and just in the time I've been on the school committee, I've never known anything other than our base seems to go down every year. We never are able to increase it. I think Karen touched on this, but like Suzanne said, we're at that point now. We can't. That's not the way forward, and this budget does reflect that. So, I just wanted to make those couple of points.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. So I'm going to add a couple things as well. Karen speaks the truth. The 4.79% is what we need, what we're asking for. I think there are several of us who think that number should be higher. But as I have said at tri-chair meetings now for the last several months, and the first one that we had prior to the town administrator leaving was, we need a reset. And everybody in that room kind of shook their head and said, yes, the school department needs a reset. And I know I've been asked many, many different times, many, many different ways the last several weeks, is there any room to reduce, cut, whatever word you'd like to put in there? And every time I say, there is nowhere to go. We have reduced to the point that we are, I don't want to say a shell of the district we were 6, 7 years ago, but we're different. And I will say, I thought the Linfield discussion was a distraction. It caused a lot of work, needless work. Now, it's interesting work, especially when you look at the police and fire numbers and the school numbers, compare one community to another. And, you know, Linfield has a major mall and commercial sector that we don't have. But the budget is what the budget is. There's nowhere for us to go other than draconian classroom cuts, increased class sizes, less electives, and that hurts the students. The superintendent and her team over the last several years have met the challenges that we have been forced to deal with and tried to keep as many cuts as possible away from the students. That is no longer a possibility. So while I respect anyone or everyone who has an opinion and has a thought, the budget is what the budget is. And our preference is to be funded how we need to be funded and to call it a day with that. So I do hope that as we go through this, everyone's hearing what we're saying. There's no more funds from the federal government. There's no more places to cut. And when we ask for 4.79%, I can guarantee anyone who's listening is that we, not only has Ms. Stella and Ms. Angelakis and their team gone through this with a fine-tooth comb, I can guarantee you that the school committee has also gone through it with a fine-tooth comb and asked questions and have accepted answers that we may or may not be happy with. We've not funded positions that a majority of the committee has wanted to fund. At the end of the day, this is a community issue, and the community needs to realize that the school department is up against it, as Suzanne said. We started with this several years ago. I remember one of my first meetings that circuit breaker was drawn down to 0. And since that time, we literally have been beating our head against the wall. So if there was some place to cut, I can guarantee you one of the 5 of us would have made that point to Ms. Stella and the superintendent. There's really nowhere else to go. And, you know, there's been some questions about as we are embarking on contract negotiations, and there's a question about language on steps and lanes and all that. And I can tell you, I spent countless hours trying to answer that question, throwing it out to the listserv of school committee members in the Commonwealth, and of the literal 20-odd, 25 responses I got to my question. There were some really interesting comments about our ability to work with the town. So I am hoping that cooler heads prevail. We're trying to be as transparent as possible. But I do remind everyone out there that state law just dictates we give one number. Take the number, accept the number, don't accept the number. It's one number. And I know when I was first on this school committee way back a while ago, that's all we did. That's all we said to the town. That's all we said to the finance committee. That's all we said to the select board. Here's the number. Take it or leave it. We
Glenn,
don't do that anymore.
Glenn, I want to jump in here because I know
Go
it
ahead.
caused me chuckles the other night when you said we only provide one number, and in fact, it
Right.
was more because I know I made the motion to add more. It's not one number, but it's the bottom line number.
Bottom line. Thank you, Amy.
Our job
you.
is to bring the bottom line number of what it is that the schools need. And, you know,
Correct.
Mary Ellen spoke the other night and said that, you know, the select board and the finance committee are the fiduciaries of the town budget and that their job is to make sure that the monies are spent well. But I will counter that and say that our job is to make sure that our students get what they need. And frankly, when a town raises money to be a town, what do? They take care of the roads, they take care of the infrastructure, they take care of the schools. And, you know, I for one, am tired of hearing people say, oh, well, back in my day, it was, you know, the schools were rated as X, Y, and Z. But, you know, as Miss Stella said a few moments ago, that correlation between net school spending and school rankings, it's real. So if we're content to be in the bottom with our net school spending, then I think we need to be content to be in the bottom, period.
Yeah, Glenn, I can add on to that just for a
Sure,
second.
John.
You mentioned community a moment ago, and I think, you know, with the vote for the new school and, you know, all of Suzanne's work on that, I think there was a pretty serious demonstration that, you know, education is a top priority in Swampscott. And, you know, I've viewed this budget process as aligning with that community sentiment. I guess that's one thought. And I guess the other thought I've had just as, you know, listening to all of these, you know, over the various few months here, you know, I have not looked at this as a process where we're spending more in this budget. I don't look at it as a spending more process. I look at it as, you know, making sure that the students have what they need to thrive, that our educators feel valued. And the opportunity is just there for, you know, creating successful outcomes for everyone. That's really how I look at this, not as a, well, we're spending more. It's really creating that environment to thrive and succeed.
Yeah, great point, Sean.
Glenn, I
Go,
just have
Suzanne.
I have one thing to say.
Sure.
I don't want us to lose sight of I don't want everyone to lose sight of our appreciation for the efforts the town has made to try to make it. I mean, I know what Karen's saying about it's not really giving a true sense of what our budget actually is, but there have been a lot of efforts to try to help us. And I think that, you know, we also have to be cognizant of what the other departments need. And I think that was part of the resetting discussion. You know, like you reset the school one year and then, you know, you reset the library and the DPW the next year, and then you reset and you just sort of go through the different departments so that we're not cutting services other places. We're just helping each other out. But there are so many people that have tried to that do support the schools, and I want to express the appreciation for the people that are trying, and I appreciate members of the different committees asking questions. I mean, at some point, you know, I'm sort of done with that because we hired this unbelievable business administrator, right? We have a seasoned superintendent. We have an unbelievable special ed director and assistant superintendent. And we have these professionals and we trust them. And it's hard to hear them being questioned in all sorts of ways. And people, I mean, I appreciate the questions, but you guys got this, and we are where we're at, but I don't know what I'm trying to say other than,
No,
you know,
I know what you're trying to say.
thanks for
Suzanne.
the help.
Absolutely.
Thanks for the help. The people that are helping, like, thank you for the help.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, Suzanne, that's a great point. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that, you know, we've had multiple tri-chair meetings. We have another one coming up on Monday. And everyone, I do believe that everyone has their heart in the right spot.
Sure, because everyone has the same group to fight for.
Right, exactly. So I do very much appreciate what you said, and I agree. You know, sometimes we have to just agree to disagree, and I do believe that we'll get to the finish line. And I know sometimes it's frustrating, but that's a really great point, Suzanne. Thank you so much.
Glenn, if I could.
I just want to add to Suzanne, I think that you're absolutely right. There have been some really good advocates who have worked with the school along the way. What's disappointing to me is that there has to be this way to work it out, and let's put the money here and let's put the money there, rather than a direct, this is what it costs, and put it in the budget so that they don't have to fight every single year.
Well, you
Can I
might
just
Pollyanna-ish.
piggyback on what you said, Suzanne, because you kind of set me up. I was debating here for the last 5 minutes whether or not to say this. But this is my last public hearing, and this is my last budget, Swampscott. And for 11 years.
I can't believe you're not standing up and dancing when you say that, but go ahead.
I have mixed emotions, but we have been put through this same ringer. I'm going to start by saying I appreciate all the people that do support us. I appreciate that this community, as John said, did build that school. We didn't do it. It was a town project. But this budget process for the last 11 years, where you've had a stable superintendent, feels the questions that come in and the suggestions that are made without an education degree feel like there's no trust in the superintendent who's leading this district, when we know that superintendent's shelf life is 2 to 3 years. There is no trust. There is a little bit of a lack of respect for the professionals that are making these decisions. And I've got to tell you, I've had it. It's 11 years of this. Every year we've demonstrated our transparency. And some of the questions that came in the last couple of weeks were questions trying to get us on something. Asking about the almost $10 million that's coming in. Does the MSBA know about it? We are more transparent than ever. And yet the more transparent we are, the more we get prodded. And quite frankly, I'm done. I am done. I'm done with this. And I'll say what I want to say. If it needs to go to town meeting floor, then I'm on town meeting floor. Enough is enough. The more information we give, the more we get prodded, the more we get these I gotcha questions. There's nothing to get us on. We're about kids. If we didn't explain as well as we could how our budget is fluid and how it can change and how there's unknowns, I don't know how else we say it. I just want to say it feels like a lack of trust. And I personally, I've tried to put up a shell over the years, am disappointed that people don't trust me to be a good team player with the town, which I have done for 11 years.
Thank you, Pam.
And I mean, I think what's a little bit different this year, at least seems to me, is that we see that there is opportunity for additional funds. We see this MSBA money coming in that is reducing the debt that the town is going to have to pay year over year. We see additional funds coming in. We know that we have excess levy capacity because we have been undertaxing. So there are ways to not only fund our budget, but to go a step further and help us to reset with our circuit breaker and other things that we could do. And I think the money is there. And I think the town people or anybody watching, or the word needs to get out that it is possible, and it doesn't have to be on the backs of the other town departments.
Can I jump in here and ask you a question, Glenn?
Of course.
Karen raises a really good point. So 2 weeks ago, Max reported in about almost $10 million that of unanticipated funds coming to Swampscott. We knew 5 million of it was coming as of September, I think it was, and know that there is some of this money that has to be directly used to pay down debt, which is terrific. And what that means is when you have that money coming in to pay down debt, that means the money that was supposed to go to pay down debt is not paying down debt. It's now
Great.
Amy, you're a tiny bit mistaken. So like
Okay.
you're just I mean in theory you're right, but it just meant borrowing less. So it's
But the
not like
money's
you
already
borrowed and it's
borrowed.
there. Yeah, but I'm just saying it's like sort of it's
The
different.
money's already been borrowed, and
No, the
Maybe Cheryl can explain.
yes, but
Yes,
sorry.
so there was one permanent borrowing that was done quite some time ago when the favorable interest rates had come out, but there was going to be subsequent borrowings. And so as part of the debt service modeling for this project, it included all of those borrowings. But when we got the MSBA money, and they did not have to do any more borrowing beyond that permanent borrowing. And I don't, I'm not clear. Patrick Luddy, the treasurer, did send us at Tri-Chair how it impacts their debt principal payments. So I'm not sure how, like, what he factored in there, but it is saving for the town about $200,000 in debt expense every fiscal year.
this year.
26.
And that is the 5 million, not the additional monies that are coming in.
Correct.
So theoretically more.
Yes.
So I guess I come back to my question to you, Glenn, which is this conversation that's happening in the tri-chair meetings?
We have raised that, but we will continue to raise that, and I'll bring that to the tri-chair on Monday.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you, Amy. Good point. Cheryl, back to you.
All right. So I just have...
Wait a minute, are we done with the presentation?
No, there's one more slide, and I certainly don't want to miss this one because our wonderful IT director was pivotal in gathering this information. So I want to thank Ms. Mackie Knowles for this. And this was interesting. You have a sense of what other districts are doing, but actually getting the data is always really helpful. So as you can see, when we look at what our comparable districts are, almost all of them are funding technology through their capital fund. We did have one district that we didn't hear back from in time, and then Stoneham had been using actually the town ARPA funds to fund their technology. So just wanted to highlight this because it was raised about how that could possibly impact our per pupil and make us look better or worse versus all the other comparable communities. But it does appear to be a common practice to fund one-to-one devices through the town capital. And that is the last slide.
Thank you, Cheryl.
You're welcome.
So Cheryl, will you just remind us what the bottom line is for the what we're asking for? What's our
for capital?
No, for our school budget.
Your total budget is...
I have it, Cheryl. Just correct me if I'm wrong. The total is $33,919,609.
Correct.
And so that's 4.9%.
4.79.
4.79.
4.79. Thank you.
Right.
Okay.
You're welcome. Does anyone have any questions, additional questions, for Cheryl, for Pam, for Martha?
I did have
Go
a
ahead,
question. As I was looking through and I was looking at the page that points to outside funding sources and what they the different staff that we hire because of that. And I was just curious how Metco fits in there. I did look through this and couldn't see anywhere particularly where it's identified how much the state how much we get through the Metco program in terms of support.
So the Metco program, it is on the total dollar that we get that we had initially put in the budget was 419,000 because that's kind of been where we've been hovering. But this year we actually ended up getting some incremental funds from Metco, and I believe our allocation went up into like 435,000 or so this year. So hopefully that actually continues into next year as well.
Yeah, I know that Metco has a very active advocacy program to work on getting more money through the state. So I just want to, anytime anybody here is asked about it, hopefully we'll all advocate since it's such an important part of our school.
Great, thank you, Amy. John, any final questions before we go vote?
No more questions, Glenn. Thank you.
Great. Karen?
No questions about the actual budget, but I did want to ask my fellow members, and I'm not sure this is the time, but when we should discuss beyond this budget, sort of step 2, which is potentially asking for additional funds in the reserve fund and circuit breaker, maybe at town meeting, or whether we need an article. I just want to investigate what that would look like, who we need to talk to, and how that would work.
Ms. Angelakis?
Yeah, I think I need to interject here. It happened, I think it was just yesterday, Jason and Cheryl, that the interim town administrator and the director of finance asked to meet with us to review the reserve fund agreement, because I had mentioned on the 23rd that it needed to be visited. It was supposed to be revisited annually. So we met and we have drafted a new agreement, actually signed it, that there's for FY26, it will go up to 600,000 from 450. And we looked at it as incremental. We did not put in writing a multi-year plan, but everyone in that room discussed that this needed to be revisited every year. In fact, we added to the agreement by November 15th, it needs to be revisited. So the 600,000 would be for FY26. But that agreement has been signed, and knowing that we have a commitment and a date within the agreement to meet annually sets us up for more success, I believe.
That's
Wow,
awesome.
that's good. Thank you for making that happen.
Thank you.
Is there a way, like our agreement was for us to spend down circuit breaker before using reserve, right? Like, is there a way we can use the reserve before we spend down circuit breaker so we can start? It doesn't help us build it up, right?
No, it just means we don't have to go lower to that 450. We're just going to the 600 and then in circuit breaker funds, and then we can dip into the special ed reserve stabilization fund.
Oh, I misunderstood you. I thought that they were adding 650 to the.
No. They were
reserve
increasing.
fund.
Our goal was so Karen's original point of, adding funds to the reserve fund just triggered for me that I needed to fill the committee on the fact that we met and that the delta for circuit breaker is no longer at 450. We upped it to 600 and continue to look forward to discussions because, as Ms. Stella pointed out, typically it's 74% of your circuit breaker reimbursement, and we're not there. That would be over $800,000 at this point. But we felt that it was a good win to at least nudge it up for FY26, knowing they have to meet again before November 15th and talk about FY27. And so the conversation will continue. But Karen, you just triggered that I hadn't shared that.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic because, that means we'll draw down to 600 instead of 450, and then we'll be taking more from the reserve fund, and then that can continue to be replenished and built up. That is ultimately what we need.
Which also means that when we go to the town and ask for money, that we need less money.
Right.
That's correct. Okay, thank you, Superintendent, for that. Kind of lost track of words. Thank you. Karen, anything else? I'm sorry.
Nope.
Great. Suzanne, any last thoughts, comments?
Nope.
Okay. Amy, any last thoughts, comments?
Believe it or not, no.
All right. So the only thing I'll add, and if I'm repeating, I apologize. We appreciate, as Suzanne said, the hard work of the other town departments and, looking at numbers and this and that. And I certainly appreciate what our team has done. And not only the professional team, as the superintendent will call them, but our own school committee. And we are here and asking for the budget we need, not the budget we want. So I'm going to leave it with that. So how this is going to work, we have 6 motions and votes to do. We have, we're going to vote on each line item and then vote on the total budget, and then we'll vote to close the school budget public hearing. So let's start with, can someone please make a motion on the cost center administration for $2,518,833?
I'll make the motion.
Can someone second, please?
I'll second.
Great, thank you. All right, again, we have to do this roll call style. John?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So it is unanimous that the cost center administration has passed for $2,518,833. Next, can someone please make a motion to vote on the cost center, the general education budget, which line item, which is $16,323,554. Can someone make a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Can someone second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. John?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. It is unanimous. The cost center for general education passes unanimously, $16,323,554. Next, can someone please make a motion on the cost center for special education? That total line item is $10,923,172. Can someone make a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Someone second?
I'll second it again.
Thank you. John?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. The cost center for special education passes unanimously, $10,923,172. Next, can someone please make a motion for the cost center school facilities? That budget line item is $2,452,147. Can someone make a motion, please?
I will.
Okay, someone second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you. Karen?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yep.
John?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. It passes unanimously. The cost center school facilities, $2,452,147. Excuse me. And then the last cost center is, can someone please make a motion for the cost center district-wide programs, $1,731,903. Someone make a motion, please.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Someone second?
I'll second.
Great. Karen?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. It passes unanimously. The cost center district-wide programs, $1,731,903. So that all rolls up to the total budget. The school budget for FY26 is $33,919,609. Can someone please make a motion to approve the school budget for FY26?
I'll do that.
Thank you. Can someone second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you. Karen?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. So it is a unanimous vote for the total FY26 school budget at $33,919,609. Thank you very much. The one last thing I do want to add before we close the school budget public hearing. In years past, I have felt, and others have said, that There have been some on administration side, on the town side, that have talked about superintendent budget, school committee budget. To the town community, there is no superintendent budget, there is no school committee budget. There is a one budget this year, and that budget has been approved by your elected school committee at $33,919,609. So with that, can someone please make a motion to close the school budget public hearing?
I'll make the motion.
And someone second, please.
I'll second.
All right, great. John?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. The school budget public hearing is closed. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Cheryl, Pam, and Martha. All right. Taking a deep breath and moving right along. Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations.
Okay,
Stella, we're back to you.
I'm back. Getting a lot of me lately. So I just wanted to give the committee a quick update on where we stand for Q2 for FY25. This is a little bit delayed just because we were working on the budget process, but I did, this is important to go over with all of you. If you do recall, the first quarter projection had us effectively ending pretty much on budget. The second quarter projection at this point, we're going to be over budget by $90,609. Like we've discussed through this whole budget process, there can be some great variability from quarter to quarter when we look at these projections, but we do our best to try and figure out where we're going to be when we end the year. So the administration cost center had very little change since the last projection, as did the district-wide cost center. The general education cost center is right now, as of Q2, projected to finish under budget by $202,000, and that was mainly our daily substitute costs and our long-term substitute costs when I did this projection. That being said, just this week I signed a status change form for a long-term sub that's coming in to fill for a long-term medical leave. So we do tend to see quite a bit of variability in those lines. So I do anticipate by Q3 that this will likely change probably downward a bit. The school facilities cost center had very little change since our last projection. And then, as has become quite a topic of discussion, and we all know this, the special education cost center did see variability, and that's where we anticipate being under budget for the year. We did have an additional out-of-district tuition. We had a settlement agreement for a student, and we did add a 1.0 special education teacher at SES, which we talked about during our budget process. So, Martha talks about this a lot. She sets her budget. We set a end date, but that number keeps changing. And so the number that she gave me in December to today has changed dramatically. So that's the Q2 projection. Happy to take any questions, but nothing surprising, at least from my standpoint.
I just have a question, and Martha, if you can just weigh in. This is just for the folks in the audience, either both the audience and those from other town committees. You just explain what a settlement is as far as special education goes?
Yes. So if there's a disagreement about what a free and appropriate public education is between the district and a family, that is another way to come to an agreement. So it's outside of the IEP process. But that is another mechanism to get to an agreement. That's
Great.
all.
Thank you. Thank you, Martha. Appreciate it.
That's it.
Great. Thank you. Cheryl, back to you.
If we continue to have that underspending or the below budget on the facilities, is it possible to take that money and either like use it as capital money or, to do something that is facilities related?
Like what?
I don't know. The windows at the new school. I mean, the windows at
Oh.
the new school.
No, you're not really, I mean, if, I'm just gonna make this up, but if there was a refrigerator that was on the fritz or something, and the facilities had been wanting to replace it, and then had some extra money in the operating budget to replace that, then they would do that, but nothing, you would never take an operating budget and be funding a form of capital expenses through the operating budget.
Okay, so where does that money go at
And
the
to
end?
be, I'm sorry,
If it stays unspent, where does that money go?
it's covering our over budget in special education.
Okay.
Great. Thank you for the question, Amy. Thank you, Cheryl, for answering. Back to you, Ms. Stella.
I'm done. Unless there's more
Excellent. Excellent. Any other questions for Ms. Stella? All right, fantastic.
The only
Moving
thing,
right along.
can I
Go
just
ahead.
mention on the special education, I do want people to remember too, it can also, we have students who move in and out of the district. And so those are not, we don't know when someone's going to move in as well. So that can also cause the volatility. And I would not know that in December of the previous fiscal year.
Right. I can't believe you wouldn't know that, Ms. Raymond. I can't believe you wouldn't know that. All right. With that, the school committee chair, again, as I think I mentioned, there is a tri-chair meeting on Monday morning at 8 a.m. And Ms. Angelakis, Mr. Kalishman, and Ms. Stella will be joining me for that meeting. Subcommittee policy.
Are you free to talk kind of in a broad way about what the topic is?
I received a phone call from the chair of the finance committee, Eric Hartman, just again regarding our budget, and we had a really good conversation about how do we get to where the school needs to be, and while watching the rest of the budget. And we had again, I thought it was a good conversation. We had Eric had a couple ideas, and we just agreed that it would just be best to talk about that in just a setting that everybody hears the same thing from the tri-chair. Once the tri-chair meeting is done, I will, as I have done in the past, make sure that everybody gets minutes of that meeting.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Amy.
Appreciate
You're
that.
welcome. Sure. Subcommittees, policy update, John and Suzanne.
So Suzanne, I can kick off this. Myself and Suzanne and Mr. Kalishman and I'm not sure who the other folks were.
Mr. Kohat.
Mr. Kohat, thank you. We met last week to talk about updates to Section A of the policy section, which is basically the foundation.
Oh, and Miss Raymond and Miss and Lisa.
Correct.
Yeah, all of us.
Yeah, it was. I should have had the list of attendees in front of me, but thank you for that. So we went through. Suzanne and I had made suggested updates. Suzanne had added some new policies, and there were some policies that were up for deletion, and we discussed all of those. And I think, Suzanne, we're going to bring these to the committee in the not too distant future, correct?
Yeah, I think where we landed was there was a bunch of policies that we can just go ahead and easily approve, and then there's some that are impacted by our federal government and rolling back some Title IX issues that we just have to make sure we're doing that right. And I have a call into our MASC rep. I was actually supposed to talk to her today, but I never connected with her. But to just talk about sort of some of the policies we had questions on. So yeah, we're going to get them to you.
So Glenn, I think for now, more to come, but we're making progress. And I think, as we've said previously, Suzanne and I will be plugging away through the other sections and going through a similar process with those same stakeholders and coming back to the committee to approve them. You're on mute, Glenn.
Again, I've never done a Zoom call ever. Thank you very much, Suzanne and Sean. The other part is bargaining update. And so, Amy, are you there? Are you with us?
Yes. Yes.
You want to just give a incredibly brief just overview of kind of how we're doing right now?
All right.
What
Sorry
we're
for
doing?
the no video. My computer is starting to die, so I figured I'd use as little as possible. We are moving forward. We've had some really terrific meetings with essentially three bargaining groups, but really into two sections. One being our largest, the teachers, and the second being our ESPs and tutors. And over the years, that has become such a similar role that it just makes sense to be doing those two things together. As always, I'll give a shout out to all of the people who are sitting around the table in this very unique bargaining format, very unlike all other towns, which is essentially just all of us. So it takes a lot of dedication and time, and it takes a lot of trust in the process. So I want to just say thank you to everybody from our superintendent and her staff to the leadership of the union.
Great. Thank you, Amy. Does anyone have anything else to add regarding the bargaining? Because I know we're all there while doing it. Okay, great. Thank you. Alrighty, public comment. If anyone out there has a comment, please feel free to raise your hand. We'll give this, again, a total of 15 minutes, and please keep your comments brief. Eric Schneider, I see you, so hold on one sec, please. Again, just as a reminder, everybody, public comment, feel free to comment as you'd like, but the school committee will not reply to your comment. Eric, I think you're there. If you can just tell everybody who you are, etc.
Hi, you can hear me?
Yes, Eric, you're all set.
Yeah, hi. Eric Schneider, 480 Pearden Road, also on the Finance Committee, and parent of, I guess, 3 kids now in public schools. So wanted to say a couple things. One thing I realized I should have said at our last joint meeting, which I thought was very helpful, and that relates to the financial summit. I know the Finance Committee Chair, Eric Hartman, was at town meeting and stood up and said that that's something that would happen. But just to clarify, it's not necessarily the Finance Committee to schedule that. It's something that the town administrator was working on. And then, when, for reasons I don't know, the town administrator had to leave, then that didn't happen. And I, just as you, I'm disappointed that that didn't happen. And then the other point was, the school committee has, over, I guess, the past 10 years, it's been, there's only been 7 different members, I think, on the school committee. But finance committee, I think we're 9, and there's been a lot of turnover. So Ms. Angelakis, sorry for all the repeated questions, and I understand it feels like you're explaining it again and again, but it is a steep learning curve for new people, and I'm sure it seems like you're explaining the same thing again, but unfortunately it is somewhat to new people. So
I appreciate that, Eric. I've got a comment. I do appreciate that. I think it's more about the lack of trust, because I think I've done nothing in my superintendency to not let people trust me, but I appreciate you bringing that up.
And then just generally sort of the budget discussion, sometimes it feels like, we're in an Escher painting where like the water is going around and around and then down the waterfall, and, everyone is looking out for them. And I think for us, from my perspective on the finance committee, it's not, as in Swampscott, there is a a large portion of people who are on a fixed income. There are, I think it's like between 10 and 15% who are under 200% of the federal poverty line, right? And you see that in your Title I students. So, increasing the budget is great, but it does have an effect, and it has an outsized effect on people with limited income and fixed income. And, um, as a parent, I'd love to double the school budget, but we can't do that. But I hope, personally that, something will get worked out. But it's not out of ill will that we're trying to, look tight at the numbers. It's because there are other people that we have to look out for too. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate the words. Thank you very much. Hold on one sec. Let me just, okay. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. Any other public comment? Please raise your hand. We'd love to hear from you. Okay. Ms. Cobbett, hold on for one sec. Let me just get over to you and give you the mic. Okay, Gina, go ahead. Just please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Gina Cobbett. I'm a parent of 2 through the high school, 57 Walnut, as well as a teacher at the middle school. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I just want to thank all of you for all the hard work you're doing. And I wanted to say I appreciate the fact that you're looking at the numbers as hard as you are. And hopefully people on the finance committee will be able to search hard and help out, because I have seen the difference between my daughter, who's a 12th grader, and my son, who's a 10th grader, and the offerings from middle school to high school. And they do change, and it's unfortunate. So I'm hoping for the kids behind them and for my son, who still has 2 more years, that there will be the same offerings and more. So thanks again, and I appreciate the time. Keep up the good work.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome, Gina. I can't believe you have a senior in high school. Wow. Gosh. Well, congratulations on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Anyone else want to address the school committee? Going up and down one last time. I do not see anyone. Thank you to Gina and Eric for your comments. Much appreciated. All right. Actions and votes. We already voted on the budget. We already voted on the donation. So we don't really have
one more donation.
Oh, do?
Yep.
Okay, so that didn't print off. So Ms. Angelakis, could I just ask you to
read
that?
I think it's linked to the agenda. If somebody can
bring
up the agenda.
On. Sorry. Let me go over here. Oops, wrong. Hold on. Sorry. 2 computers going at the same time here. Here, agenda. Oh, you're right. I do apologize.
That's okay.
Okay. Talked about that. So let me just open it up here. Okay. This was submitted by Linda O'Keefe, high school athletics, and it was donated by. There's multiple people on here. I don't think I have that. Oh, I do. Okay, so I'm gonna just, because I have to look sideways on here. So hold on one sec. All right, so let me start again here. Hold on, let me just go to the top of the page. So the following donors: Roz Nadler, Susan O'Brien, the Shapiro family. These are the Shapiro family and Ms. Nadler from Swampscott. Sue O'Brien is from Rockland. Marianne, and I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher your name, Meskimen from Auburndale, and Virginia Dodge from Swampscott. And they are donating a total of $455 to the athletic department in the memory. Let me just do this. there you go. In the memory of Coach DeFelice. As we gave Mr. DeFelice a moment of silence last meeting, to those donors, again, it is so appreciative that anyone thinks of the school department when they want to make a donation. So on behalf of the school committee, I do appreciate the donation of $455. We will just have a vote to accept the donation. Can someone please make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Can someone second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you. Suzanne?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
John? Amy?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Again, thank you to those donors who made the donation in memory of Coach DeFelice, $455. Again, it's very generous of you, and I know the athletic department will use that money wisely. So thank you very much. Thank you, Superintendent, for pointing that out. It didn't print off on my page.
Yep.
All right. As I was saying, so we don't really have a consent agenda because there's only one item on there. That's the regular session minutes of January 23rd, 2025. Can someone please make a motion to accept those minutes?
I'll make the motion.
Great. Someone second, please.
I'll second.
Great. Thank you. John?
Yes.
Okay. Suzanne?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And I will also vote yes on that minute. So we come to that time of the program. Before we do adjourn, I do want to thank everybody for their discussions this evening. Those, my fellow school committee members, the district administration, those folks who have stayed on the line. We had a total of about 60, 65 at its apex. And that's just on the Zoom. That's not counting YouTube or Facebook. And I think that just goes to show everybody how important this budget is, but how everybody views our school department. So with that, can someone please make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Someone second, please.
I'll second.
All right. Suzanne?
Yes.
Karen? John?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
I will also vote yes. We are adjourned.
Have a
Thank
good
you,
night,
everybody.
everyone.
See
Good
ya.
night.
Thank you.
All right, Glenn, I'm going to end the streams.
Great. Thank you so much for hanging with us. I appreciate
You
all your
got it.
work.